Tensions run high in the Silverstone rain as the championship takes another twist. This is the Silverstone Review.
Hello and welcome back to the British Touring Car Podcast. We are back once again. Penultimate round of the season is all done and dusted. Silverstone has now been wrapped up. It was a wet weekend, wasn't it?
Yes and no. It was a really weird one. So there were long dry patches, but Silverstone did not drain on the track. It stayed wet all weekend for the racing, certainly. And then we got lots of short, sharp showers, which is difficult to say 3 times fast. But
Did you get caught in any of them?
Oh yes, yeah. The one of the good things about Silverstone is that there are free grandstand entries to, albeit they don't open all of them, but the ones that are open are free to enter, and therefore there are logical places where you can stay dry throughout the weekend, which is good.
Enjoyable experience, because a couple of messages I got from you on Sunday said it was a little bit boring this weekend.
It was really strange. We'll get this bit out of the way before we get into the race. There's a few bits to cover off before we actually get into the weekend's action, but it felt really flat yesterday. It wasn't particularly well attended, I don't think. I've certainly seen it busier, and not just busier 10-15 years ago, busier in the last 2-3 years.
Okay.
I wonder if the way that racing's been handled this year at Snetterton and Donington, where the rain put off or delayed a lot of racing, whether people have gone, do you know what, I don't fancy just sitting in the cold all day waiting to see what happens, because we go back to Donington, the communication in particular that day was appalling.
That was a long wait, wasn't it, that day?
And the communication was so bad as well on the day that I wonder if a few people have gone, do you know what, it's just not worth it. But then I also thought, it's 40 quid a ticket this year for Silverstone. I thought, that's a lot because you don't get a refund unless the event is cancelled. So that was a little bit surprising. I just wonder if also the price of the ticket put people off, because that's a lot more expensive than it used to be as well. There was a whole thing being pushed about how this weekend was a sustainability weekend for motorsport. All I saw at the circuit was some bins with a sign saying where to put things.
Would you like to hear some of the other token efforts?
Yeah, I really would, because I didn't see anything else while I was there at all.
So
hang on, I'm lying. So there's a sign in a toilet saying be sustainable.
The safety car this weekend was completely electric.
Yeah, okay, and that was cool. And obviously I didn't realise it at the circuit because I wouldn't have picked that up. But no, that I have come across that further. And DeLion's running funny fuel.
DeLion was running on fully sustainable fuel this weekend. I'll get onto that a little bit later.
Which they made no comment of during any of the races. Now, they mentioned it in qualifying, but they didn't mention it at all in commentary on the races. Whether they mentioned it in the bits between, I don't know. I was at the event yesterday, so today I've been spooling through and concentrating on the racing rather than the studio banter. But that was strange. I'd say the whole weekend just felt a bit flat and a bit meh, to be honest with you. There was no sort of freebies being handed out, which I know we're seeing less of that in the touring cars now anyway, but at Silverstone last year there was stuff. Yeah. The few positives, the Accelerate garage had a large area where anybody could walk into and watch the action and get right close to the cars.
Is that where the DJ was?
That was where the DJ was, yes. They also had, which is quite interesting, a mounted Swindon engine. So you could see how it worked. I mean, obviously, it wasn't running.
Completely bog standard.
Yeah, but you could actually see it, and you could see how the power unit fits and all that kind of stuff. That was quite interesting. And they had, as I say, you could see the cars being worked on. There was a DJ, and given how wet it was quite nice to stand under in the garages. BMW had a similar thing to that last year, but didn't do anything like that this year. There was nothing for them that you could get into the garage for. And Napa have got a really nice illuminated back wall in their garage, which what was interesting is as you walk up and down the pits, it's very, very clear to see who's got money this year and who hasn't got as much money.
Yeah, it's the track that we always see it at, because they do have the biggest garages at Silverstone. They have the most amount of space, and they can bring all their shiny bits and pieces to show off to the crowds.
Yeah. The other thing that was a bizarre one, and in the end it didn't matter because the field was better than I gave it credit for, was that despite the forecast and despite what we've had at Donington earlier in the season, we were parked in a field, and we were due to take my car this weekend. My car has broken, so we didn't. We took my dad's SUV. I'm quite grateful we did, because I couldn't believe it when they wanted to direct into the field. I was like, but it's We're having a month's worth of rain in a day. What are we doing?
I was amazed when you sent me that picture of the fact that you were getting parked up in the field, especially because Silverstone is known for having these wide expanses of car parks that are on hard ground.
The museum area of the track where the museum is situated has got a humongous car park, and it's not okay. It's a little bit of a walk into the circuit in comparison. Yes, I get that, and there was an accessible shuttle bus on which would have negated that anyway.
Yeah.
I just looked at it and thought, but in fairness, the field did hold and it didn't churn up too badly. Nobody that I saw me left were stuck, so the field was of better value and I gave it credit for. But I was getting flashbacks to the Donington and Brands that media day as well.
Oh, that Brands media day, jeez.
Yeah, so we'll get on to the racing in a moment. Before we do get on to the touring car side of things, though, I was really fortunate enough this weekend to see history in the making and watch the resultant podium, which was really cool. So Abby Eaton, who some people may know from the Grand Tour, being their resident racing driver when she replaced the American, I don't remember the name. I'm not as up on the Grand Tour as I was Top Gear. She is racing in the Porsche Carrera Cup this season. She qualified pole.
Yep.
And in race 1, she converted that to a second. Charles Rainford won that one. But in race 2, she got the tyre call right. Some people went on slicks. She stuck for wets. And she became the first female driver to ever win a Porsche Carrera Cup race, keeping behind her George Gamble and Daniel Lloyd, no less. So that was a really cool piece of history. On the same weekend, where Abby Pulling went and won 2 races in Singapore, association with the F1 weekend that just happened there. So it is really cool to see. And there's still nowhere near enough diversity and inclusion in the sports. But it is really cool to see that history made this weekend by Abby Eaton, who has also got a new sponsor.
Yeah, and her livery this weekend was actually a big number on the front of the car. I don't know whether you were able to see what that number was, but it was £33 million, right? And that number is what they've worked out.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
What it should cost, or what it sort of costs on average, for a driver to go from karting all the way through to F1.
Wow.
33 million.
Wow. I didn't know that. When I saw the car this weekend, so she's not necessarily got a new sponsor. Maybe it was just a one-off livery.
I think it was to raise awareness of the amount of money and the amount of sponsorship that is needed throughout motorsport.
Right.
And it was a really good weekend. It's her home circuit as well.
Yes.
So she knows it extremely well, which is probably why she's had that better result than she has had throughout the rest of the season. And don't forget, she's not in the pro class. She's a Pro-Am driver taking an outright race win this weekend.
And in style as well.
Yes, very much so.
Just to note before we move on to touring cars, that result also means that George Gamble now leads the Porsches going into the final weekend. So.
It's all very tight in the Porsches as well, isn't it?
It's been a good season for the Porsches. We'll cover that off in the season review when we look back at things. But let's now get into the touring cars. We're a touring car podcast. I don't think there's anything else to say about sort of the weekend generally, so let's dive straight into the touring car podcast side of things. We start on Saturday with qualifying, which was predominantly a wet one.
Yes, predominantly. However, the first session was practically completely dry. There were a few spits and spots of rain, which drivers were kind of expecting. It was forecast, but the first session was able to get away pretty much scot-free in a completely dry session. Whereas the second session was almost completely wet. So there were a couple of fluctuations in time, but of those main drivers that missed out, it was Ash Sutton being the main casualty. It's the first time this season that he's missed out on getting through Q1, which was quite a surprise and quite hampering, especially at this time of the season.
Yep, agreed.
Other drivers of note to go out. Moffat, as per normal. In
fairness to Moffat, he had to have an engine change between FP1 and FP2, which meant that he didn't get much running in FP2, if any, or FP1. I can't remember which way around.
From what I've seen, he's had a really poor and then, unfortunate weekend.
When it came to qualifying, his transponder went, which meant he didn't have any hybrid either.
Yeah.
Either. So, in fairness to Moffat, this weekend at least, there is some mitigation.
It was still faster than House did, though. Sutton were probably the main casualties, as we kind of expect. But getting through into the second part of qualifying, it was Dan Camish and Jake Hill were the big names to miss out at this point.
Camish was a surprise. Hill's not so much so when you look at the hybrid allocation.
Hill was kind of expecting to just be inside the top 10.
When he was.
which he achieved, yes. But I think when he then saw that Ingram got through to the top 6 shootout, was a little more miffed.
Yeah, but I think that Hill perhaps got some setup not the way it needed to be, and also Ingram is just a demon in these conditions.
He is very much so. However, the story of qualifying really rumbles down to the technical regulations and the technicalities of finishing the sessions.
Yeah.
We saw this weekend PMR get both cars excluded, having Aaron Taylor-Smith already taken the fastest lap time in qualifying, double third fastest, and we also saw Ziglos get excluded, all for ride height issues.
Yeah, I didn't see Zilos's in the pit lanes. I don't know. Dobble, definitely the roller didn't go under the front, so that's fair enough. I do feel really sorry for Taylor Smith because it was on the side and it was damaged, and for me there is no benefit to having the sides lower. There's no.
That's what he said in his interview as well. As long as it goes over the front, that's where you get the advantage from.
Absolutely, because it grips, because it's further to the floor, so you get more downforce and more grip, and therefore more speed in the corners. At the side, and I thought that if there was damage, there was a little bit of room for manoeuvre, but it is rules are rules. However, do you think it's fair that that they were both disqualified from the whole of qualifying, or should they have been done from the top 6? Because you're now assuming that car was illegal for the entire part, and does that then mean we should start doing tests for each part of qualifying?
The thing is, the car has got to be.
Because if that's now...
It's got to be legal throughout the whole session.
But if that car's illegal through the first 2 sessions, then you've effectively cost 2 drivers the chance to go through.
I understand that.
So do you actually now need to look at checking at the end of each session, even if it's done randomly, because I appreciate the time problems, etc., etc., to...
Like the weighbridge in F1.
Yeah, exactly, to make sure that they are, because if they are... By kicking them out of the whole of qualifying, you're assuming that they were illegal for the whole of qualifying, in my mind. Otherwise you just exclude them from the Fast 6 session, which therefore means, and with Ziglos, you've cost 3 drivers the chance, and actually where the championship is, Hill could have been in the top 6 shootout, potentially, and therefore he could have been on pole, potentially. I don't think he would have done, because I think Ingram did such a mega job this weekend, but we're now jumping to the end of the podcast a little bit. We're going to Brands Hatch where they're tied on points, which we'll get to.
Spoiler alert.
This stuff really matters.
Yeah, it does.
So I also accept it's the first season of this, and there's a few things that need to be clarified. I get all of that, but I think that is now something to be looked at for next season. I really do.
I think it would be really hard to implement it at the end of each of the sessions, because it will make the qualifying session as a whole much longer.
Yeah.
And as you say, whether you randomly pick or whether you pick the top driver to go through, I don't know what would be the fairest way to do that.
Yeah, I think because during the session you could ask them to come into the pit lane, but because it's only 10 minutes each, that is a long. And if you go to something like Croft or Snetterton, that's a long time to be having the check done. I think at the end of each session, 2 cars are just pulled aside as you come back in, and they have the ride height checked, randomly done. Of course, as we'll get to later in the pod of conspiracists,
you pay the risk.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, because I say
it is.
What you've done there is you excluded half the field from that top 6 shootout, which to me is inherently wrong, because that you've cost 3 other drivers that place in there, and those drivers that missed out are in the championship fight.
Yeah, it's difficult because we kind of knew PMR were going to go well here this weekend, and having them qualify first and third is not too much of a surprise considering what they did last season in taking that pole position. Yeah, it's difficult, especially in these changing conditions as well, because that is the crux of when these issues come about. Yeah. In the dry sessions, you wouldn't need to really have these checks. It's when that ride height is changed, which they spent a hell of a lot of time on Zilos's car changing the settings to get it ready for that final session. I'm amazed they ran that close to the limit that it then failed.
But it must also mean that they do all 6 cars anyway, if Zilos was found out, because he went in the top 3. So, I perhaps one answer is to have more staff, as it were, that can do it, rather than relying on one person with one roller. I don't know. That's something to perhaps look at in the off-season, to how that gets looked at. I don't want to get bogged down for the whole of the pod on this, but yeah. It's an interesting point, and I think it has actually had a bigger ramification than perhaps was seen at the time.
Yep.
But of course, as you say, that meant Ingram was on pole for race number 1.
Yeah, he took pole position with a 1 minute 2.38, which will become crucial towards the end of the pod, knowing our
it won't.
predictions.
Well, it won't.
No, it was. We were a little bit out, shall we say, on our wet qualifying times.
I was more talking about the fact that I've been robbed this weekend by Tom Chilton being Tom Chilton, having one of those weekends, and by Mr. Gow and his roller of terror.
Yes. You are.
I will just say for the record,
the fact that you have both of them excluded means you were incredibly unfortunate.
I will just say for the record that I've got no problem with the double one at all. That's slam dunk. The Taylor Smith one I think is incredibly harsh.
Yeah.
And not just because I lost a point out of it. I just think that is incredibly harsh when you look at what he's lost to what he has allegedly gained. I think that's complete opposite ends of the scale. It will be the first time I think a penalty is too harsh this weekend, as well as we'll get to as we go through this record. It's going to be a long one.
Yeah, there were.
What have you done now?
What?
On my phone. You're in the wrong place. Oh, I see.
My notes.
Oh, okay, sorry.
There were many points of controversy, shall I say, this weekend, and we will get to them at the right point in the podcast. But if we get straight into race 1 now,
yep.
I think we'll start with all the action.
Yeah. So for race 1 then, it was a wet weather race. So all cars were on wets. Mikey Dover was unable to make the start. He had a turbo issue and was pushed back into the pit lane, which is a shame for him.
At least he couldn't... If he'd have done 2 formation laps this time, he'd have been fine though.
Yeah, which is quite ironic for him, yeah. It was a good start by Tom Ingram, who got off the line well and did well to move across and cover off Turkington. Hill went straight into third with a good move on Cook through the outside of Copse. Yeah,
it was Ingram's 10th career pole and going for win number 7 at Silverstone.
Yep. Huff was through the gravel at Beckett's, which dropped him a bit further down the field. And then Camish and Cook went for a few laps side by side racing, which is very, very good indeed. Sutton was up to 8th by the end of lap 2, a signal of intent from where he started on the grid.
Yep.
And then Rowbottom managed to nip ahead of Camish as well. Camish had a really sort of sluggishy start and didn't really settle into this race particularly early. The race came to him as it went on, but it was certainly a poor start. Rowbottom then managed to lock up through Brooklands. Not Brooklands, what's the one before?
Beckett's,
thank you very much, never be one. And
lock up.
Oh, he locked up.
Did you hear Camish's interview? In that
he almost sorted him out for me.
Sorted him out, yeah, which made it sound a lot worse than it actually was.
He locked up and went to the back of Cook. Cook recovered it well, but the damage to Rowbottom's car was sadly terminal. It's one of those where it looks really bad on the camera, but equally you've got to remember the conditions. They're wet, they're greasy, and as Cook said rather magnanimously in race 2 before
surprisingly from
Cook before his interview, he said, "Look, we've all been there, we've all done it. I'm not holding any grudges. It is what it is. Fair play." Had he been knocked out of the race and not finishing sort of up on,
he was able to climb
on the podium,
climb back up the grid well, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas Rowbottom really felt the harshest punishment of being out of the race.
Quite a lot of screams in the crowd at this point because there was a large lick of flame that came out the side of Rowbottom's car. Trying to explain to people around me that's where the exhausts are, and it's something to be alarmed about. But absolutely. Lap 5, July was off after contact with Smiley. I believe July actually had a puncture for this as well.
I was going to say, I thought he outbraked himself.
Well, he came into the pits, and I'm sure over the tannoy at the circuit, they said he had a puncture. Okay. He certainly had a puncture at one point this weekend, and having looked through the other 2 races, I can't see where else that might have been. So
he went in, then came back out, and then went back into the pits.
Yeah, I think
which makes me think it's less likely to be a puncture, or it was some other issue.
Yeah. Lap 8, Hill came by Turkington. It looked like team orders on the TV screens, and it was confirmed to be team orders after the fact. I found that really interesting, given that Turkington is, as Tim Harvey was saying, coming into the weekend, still technically in this championship fight.
And at this point, Ingram had already built a 3-second gap over Turkington, which was quite impressive at that point.
I think it was the right call by WSR because realistically speaking, there is only one driver that's going to win this championship from that stable, and it isn't Turkington.
And there's really only one driver in that team that goes well in the wet.
Yeah, and was quicker at the time as well. And was also potentially more strife behind, with Camish starting to come back into the race a little bit as well.
Yes, he was.
Camish would then come close to Turkington and put pressure on to get by. And I suppose the really weird thing about this is that Camish would then get through on lap 10. It did feel like him and Sutton worked together. Sutton sort of jinked to the outside to block the space for Colin to where he could then potentially try and keep Camish off.
Yeah.
So rather than Sutton try and follow Camish through, it looked as if basically did a bit of a squadron manoeuvre, as it were, where he gave Colin something to think about on the outside, Camish gave him something to think about on the inside. In the end, Camish was able to get through.
Yeah.
Sutton followed through then on lap 11, which meant that Turkington had lost 3 places at the exact same point towards the end of the straight. Now, whether there were hybrid passes and he decided not to defend it with hybrid, I don't know. Whether it was just a straight line speed for the BMW, because the Nappers haven't been good in a straight line this year. They haven't. That has been their Achilles heel this season. So it's just a weird one. They've seen a couple this year on Turkey where I wouldn't say it looked easy, but it just looked a bit bizarre.
It felt like a weird drop off of pace mid-race, because he didn't fall too much further after that. He wasn't completely dropped by them, the three of them.
No, and I don't think that he got the setup well, it certainly wasn't drying. So if they went on a wet setup, it wasn't as if the track was getting so dry that the tyres were getting too hot to cope, because it was still, there were spots of rain throughout the race. There was a heavy downpour at one point throughout the race as well. So it's not as if the tyres were going off as if the track was drying. So that was quite bizarre. By lap 14, Jake Hill had begun to catch Tom Ingram. And then a bit of excitement because the race was sort of panning out a little bit. By lap 16, I was able to give an 8.5 to Morgan for his little spin across the...
He was very lucky. I don't know how close he got, because of the camera shot, I don't know how close he got to the barrier.
I was sat at Cops. He was very close.
Yeah?
He was very close.
New set of overalls.
Yeah, he basically ran wide at Cops, caught, I presume, a bit of standing water on the wet curbs and sent the car into a pirouette and then got onto the wet grass. And it was just, that was interesting to see just how wet the grass was, because he picked up a hell of a lot of speed on that grass.
Yeah.
And I think in the end it was 3 full turns. Might have even been 4, but an 8.5 from me.
Yeah, that dropped him from 6th down to 14th and kind of scuppered that first race, which was at that point going fairly well for him.
By lap 17, Dan Zelos was from last to 10th. I'm just going to put out there, again, talent that should be on the grid next season. I'm going to be bold, and it's going to be quite harsh to Pearson in a way, but I think in these 2 races, Zelos is... I know Pearson took the race win, but I think consistency-wise, he's done a better job this season. I know it's easier when you've only got less races, but...
Throughout the 6 races and the difficult conditions that we've had at Silverstone, I think he's shown a lot more potential than Pearson has shown throughout the rest of the season.
Agreed.
And yeah, it would be a travesty, especially at the very least, if he doesn't get a run out of Brands.
Well, the minis are at Brands, but he's already won it, so you just think he should be there.
Yeah.
In the final few laps, Hill closed right up to the back of Ingram, who defended well. He decided when to use the hybrid. He saved it all up. It was good by Ingram. He's clearly got his head around this hybrid, perhaps more so than some of the other drivers, about where it's best to use it. There was almost a fatality where Hill locked up coming into the final complex and nearly punted Ingram.
That was fag paper, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very, very tight.
Yeah, that was close.
In fairness to Hill, he did manage to avoid it, and he held his hands up after, saying he locked the rear axle and just came very close to Ingram at the back of Brooklands. And then Huff managed to have a big slide and a pirouette. It looked like a puncture.
It was a puncture with 2 laps to go. Unfortunately, came into the pits for that and was dropped all the way down to the back. Yeah,
race 1 it flat to deceive at times. There's a lot of nearly battles, I felt. What I was really interested about in this race that really sort of stuck out to me was that there was no team orders at Napa. So Camish wasn't told to move over for Sutton. Now, his interview afterwards, Camish seems absolutely intent on beating Ash. The way he said it was always nice to finish in front of Ash for a podium or words to that effect.
Yeah.
I found it quite pointed. I don't know if he's got a little bit of not a chip on his shoulder, but feeling a bit of pressure to outscore Ash or outperform Ash.
I think this is the season where he has been closest to Ash, because the car's been struggling a little bit more this year, and he's at that point in the championship where he might have got it into his own head that Sutton's probably not going to win this.
But was he?
But to have the bragging rights within the team, I think is quite a big coup, especially beating last year's champion.
Do you think he can finish the season ahead of Sutton? I don't.
Possible.
I don't think so. And I think the reason for that is, as we'll get to, is how Sutton drives in race 2 and 3. I think that is why you'll. Yeah. But I'm amazed that he wasn't told to move over, given that realistically for Napa, who will want to have another champion and will want to be the team that gave Sutton the record-breaking title and all that kind of stuff, I'm amazed they didn't tell Camish to move over. I'm utterly amazed.
Yes and no.
Particularly when you look at what WSR have done with Colin, who's a 4-time champion and is just as, at this point, technically in it as Camish was, or is, however you want to put it. I'm surprised that they haven't looked at that and reacted and gone, bloody hell, even WSR are doing team orders. Even Colin is being sacrificed for Hill.
Yeah,
we've got to step this up. I don't know. I find it strange.
And the only thought I can have on that is that it's only 1 or 2 points difference. I know it can make a hell of a
Sam,
difference.
it's tied at the top of the championship by its brands.
I know it can make a hell of a difference at the end of the season.
How many times have we seen the championship won by 1 or 2 points?
Yeah, I know.
Okay. Before I go to classification, you've got anything I've missed from race 1?
No.
Perfect stuff.
I've got all those.
Okay, no worries at all. In that case, it was Ingram, the race winner, from Jake Hill from Dan Camish in 3rd, Sutton 4th, Turkington 5th, Chilton 6th on the road, although this would be reversed with Cook later on, and we'll come to penalty corner at the end of the review. Cook in 7th, Osborne, who I thought raced well this weekend.
He did, surprisingly as well.
Took 8th, Watson 9th, Zelos round out the top 10 with Morgan, Aaron Taylor-Smith, Smiley, Moffat and Sumpton finishing up in the points paying positions.
Moffat got points in the end.
He did, yeah.
It felt like he had an absolutely awful weekend.
Oh, he did, but yeah. But equally, again, it's a field of 19.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
Was it 20?
No, it was 19.
Oh, 19
that
double,
race was double.
So you've only got to move up 4 places.
No, that's true.
And with respect, you're going to assume you're going to move past Halstead and Sumpton at some point. So that's now 2 of those 4 places.
Yeah.
So,
should we go straight into race 2?
Let's jump in.
Not as wet, but still quite damp.
Yeah, I thought I was sat at Luffield for this one, and I thought that they might go for, or somebody might take the gamble on slicks. I know Silverstone takes an age to dry, and it was the right call not to go on slicks, but it was dry.
Yeah, so there wasn't any standing water. No. There wasn't any rain.
Spray was minimal.
It was going to go from a damp track to being a greasy track to possibly forming some sort of dry line.
Yeah.
But they did all start on wets. Camish bogged down at the start. Got a really quite poor start in this one. Meanwhile, Ingram held the lead at the front.
Yeah, Hill had a bit of a poor start here as well, I thought. He seemed a bit slow to react, maybe, not sure. But Ingram managed to cover off that rear-wheel drive threat very, very well.
I think through all 3 races, Ingram got a really consistent, good launch this weekend, which really helped him out. But it was fairly evident early on that Sutton was under investigation, and this was due to have mechanics still working on the car as I think the 30-second ball goes up to race start.
Napa deny having any work on the car at this point, I believe, but yeah.
There were questions about it, but he was given 3 laps to serve a drive-through penalty, which...
I think that rule is ridiculously harsh.
It is harsh, isn't
because it's not the driver's fault. I understand it's a team sport, I get that implicitly, but next lap, Houser was given a 5-second penalty for being out of position at the start. Make it make sense. But the discrepancy between the two is... And I would argue that being out of position at the start is a worse offence than having a mechanic lay off personally, because you've got more to gain from it.
Do you think it should be dealt with in like a fine or a point taken off their championship tally or something like that?
I'm happy to have a 5-second or 10-second penalty. I'm happy with a penalty to be given... But like a drive-through is nonsense because that is effectively a disqualification.
It's race ending.
It's a disqualification from the race, effectively, just not in those terms. I'm happy for. I think that, or you give them a points penalty in the teams and manufacturers race. That's fine. Or you give him a 5 or 10-second penalty. But to give him a drive-through penalty, and it's not just I'm a Sutton fan. I think that
the thing is, it's not Sutton's fault. No. So why should he have to bear the brunt of the pain? Whereas if you take it off the team's championship or the manufacturer's championship, I think that is a more justified punishment.
If you look at F1 as a comparison, if a driver is unsafely released, they get what, a 10-second penalty?
Yeah, it depends.
Depends on the nature.
Yeah.
Which seems fair because the driver hasn't got a lot of control over it. It is a team error. But they're not ruining the race for saying you've got to have a drive-through penalty or 10 seconds stop go or anything like that. I don't think they even do 10 seconds stop go in F1 anymore. but yeah, I think that, as I've always said on here, the penalty for a rule break should fit the severity of the crime. I don't, given in particularly that the mechanic wasn't exactly fitting wheels at this point, it seemed it might have been he was closing the door.
He was closing the door, yeah.
Which seems to give a drive-through.
I know.
And I know you can't start having levels because it gets too... I know you've got to have a one-size-fits-all, I get that. But, yeah, for then Watson and Halstead to get penalties for being out of position for 5 seconds and then something to have a drive-through, I can't make it make sense in my mind.
Yeah, as we say, the team were arguing that fact, but he did come in at the end of those 3 laps to serve the drive-through.
I think he should have stayed out and just fought about it afterwards.
Bear the brunt.
Fight afterwards in the bus. But I understand why they haven't done so, but because he would have been black flagged at that point. But I'd have ignored that too. But there you go. I'm not a racer.
That's why you're not racing.
yeah. And actually, I suppose I wouldn't have a leg to stand on, so I moan about drivers not respecting flags.
Yep.
So, yeah, but it's a rubbish rule and it needs changing.
Meanwhile, your pick for one of your predictions this weekend lost 6 positions in the first 2 laps.
Yeah.
Chilton had a really poor start and it just fell through the field.
Yes.
As you say, Halstead was out of the position at the start, got a 5-second penalty for that. Meanwhile, Smiley, who had a really good weekend, was up to 8th and going really well in these mixed conditions. We all say it's a classic leveller.
It is, yeah.
And the Cupra seems to deal with it quite well.
Smiley's always been quite good in the rain. I remember the first time round with BTC Northern, etc. He's always been a good multi-weather driver.
Yep. So Sutton came in on lap 6 for his drive-through. And then Turkington got back past Camish up into 3rd. Quite a classic hybrid pass down the back straight, wasn't it?
Good move by Turkington. Good move.
It seems that he had the pace there, just not in race 1.
Camish did seem to lack pace in this one, though. I have to say, he wasn't anywhere near as fast as he was in race 1 or in race 3. So with a little tweak on the car, it didn't quite go the way they wanted it.
Yeah. Hill then got through on lap 7 into Brooklands. I haven't written down who that was on.
Ingram.
It was on Ingram, wasn't it?
It was a good move around the outside. Yeah, it was a good move around the outside by
I don't know
Hill.
why I didn't put that in my notes.
Cut back in, good move. Ingram defended it as well as he could, but yeah, a good bit of respect between the two drivers. Then Hill just went to the...
Yeah, he had a good amount of pace in this race. I think Ingram might have gone the wrong way on setup.
Without a doubt, yeah.
Whereas he then reverted back to fact in race 3. Smiley was now up to 6th by this point, and looking really nice and quick. And then on to lap 8, Cook got past Camish. As you say, Camish was really struggling for pace in this race. Watson got a 5-second penalty. Why that took a further 7 laps to work out?
I can only see somebody's dobbed him in.
I assume so.
And they've gone back to look at it. I can only assume that's the case.
Yeah.
Because, I don't understand how it takes that long to look at it otherwise.
And then we had Chilton. Really?
Yeah, and all my dreams. Yeah. Let's not cut about it. Let's say how it was. Yeah, Chilton, who topped FP1 and FP2, then decided to do qualifying on the wrong tyre for S&G. I'll keep it PG for the Bants. Decided to do it on the wrong tyre, running the medium tyre for reasons best known to himself. Just about got in the top 10 in race 1, and then decided to end everything I ever dreamed of this in predictions race by having a problem again. The reliability on that car this year has been appalling. It really has. It really has.
Well, not just his, I suppose. There have been problems at Accelerate this year with getting the condition of parts to be as good as it needs to be. I think all the new parts have gone to Ingram.
Which makes sense. He's a contender,
but Chilton has bared the brunt of it, though, hasn't he?
I think he's had worse reliability problems. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he pulled off. I'm still not aware as to why.
No, nor am I. Just the car. Yeah.
And then he started moving further down the Wellington Straight midway through the race, which no one else picked up.
Yeah, I think he was trying to move the car into a more safe position, I think, so as not to need the safety car, particularly when you think about Ingram potentially with an issue as well. I think there would have been a want from the team to make sure that any possibility of safety car was negated. Potentially. I can only assume that's one of the reasons.
Osborne at this point, who had a really strong race 1, was slightly struggling as it dried up. Although was dropping back a few positions.
In fairness, and I've put at the top of my notes here, race 2 was really dull up top, but actually the mid-pack was really exciting, and Osborne raced really well in a pack with Zelos, Aaron Taylor-Smith, Smiley,
They were all
Morgan.
chopping and changing their positions, weren't they?
And he made some good moves that weren't picked up on camera. I was, sat at the final complex for this one. He made some really nice moves and defends into there that weren't picked up on the main coverage. So, I thought it was pretty good.
So, on to lap 13, Turkington managed to get past Ingram. At this point, we could see that Ingram's pace just wasn't in the car in this race. And it wouldn't take long until Cook was sailing up to the back of him, and then also past him on lap 15 into Brooklands.
If I could just go back a couple of laps, Morgan made a great move on Zelos around the outside on lap 12 for a position. Yeah, hung it out on the outside and stuck to it and got past Zelos in good fashion. So we've given Morgan a bit of criticism this season. Also, I might be overpraising Zelos apparently, so therefore he lost position. Rubbish. There you go. That's balance, isn't it?
Sutton, having served his drive-through, managed to get up to 15th at this point with the fastest lap, so gaining a few little points back.
I have to say, the recovery here was amazing. He was a good third, if not half a lap down. The fact he was even able to get back onto that train, I think, is without a safety car as well.
Yep. Shows, and I've put here, could this be the end of his title hopes? Yes. And I think, as we've got to the end of this weekend, they're level on points at the top, and he's 30 odd back.
I don't think he's out
35 back, I think.
Yeah, but to a degree, and we'll cover that more in the preview show, not for brands, but he's got nothing to lose. When Ash's got nothing to lose,
I know.
When Ash's got nothing to lose, don't rule him out winning all 3 races.
Are you envisaging a Jason Plato in 2009? Was it where he won all 3?
Yeah, but didn't win the championship.
But didn't win the championship.
All I'm saying is
history does like to repeat itself.
All I'm saying is that Sutton will be going into the title decider with a very outside chance, but equally with nothing to lose. So I can see him making moves, which I remember he won.
Favours will he pull in?
I remember when he won a race there. I think it was the year Cavendish lost the title in the Subaru, and he made some quite frankly ridiculous moves to make sure he won the race and kept his record of winning a race in every season he's contested. And some of those moves he made defied everything. So in that barge as well, which have been rubbish all season. So all I'm saying is that don't rule it out. Although I agree with you, I think that this race has severely dented any hope he had. Yes, I can accept. Yeah.
Smiley made a big defensive on the final lap from Morgan and was able to keep hold of 6th position.
Yeah,
which would be crucial when it came to the ball draw.
I will say that from lap 15 onwards, it was all a bit dull after that. It was sort of fizzled out.
Yeah.
What I will say is I believe Rowbottom somehow lost 3 seconds on the last lap of the race, which meant Sutton got to
think
third.
He missed about 4 gears.
Yeah, in fairness, they said afterwards it was instructions and poor. Rowbottom was, as Sutton put it, the sacrifice lamb again. But
yes.
To be fair to Rowbottom, that he's had a pretty poor season.
And he has this at Silverstone, doesn't he?
But he'll also know where which side his bread is buttered, as it were. So
consequently it meant that Sutton would go on to finish 12th with the penalty for Watson as well. With, as you say, Robo letting him pass. Ingram finishing 4th, with Hill taking the win from Turkerton, and then Cook.
So Hill from Turkerton from Cook, Ingram, Camish, Smiley, Morgan, Dan Zelos, Aaron Taylor-Smith and Osborne making out the top 10. Huff, Sutton, Rowbottom, Dobble and Watson in the final points playing positions. Right, let's cover it off, because we're going to have to cover it off. There was a bit of controversy then about the reverse grid draw, which I've watched again 3 times today. So,
can I just put a precursor in?
Yeah, please do. Yeah, give a bit of background.
Up at Knockhill, the ball draw was made again by Hill. He'd won race 2 on a significantly high table.
Yeah.
And it has been traditional for the pot that the draw is made in, that the bottom half of it, you can see the balls being swirled around, and you can see the numbers on the balls.
Which you've got to do for fairness sake, because otherwise you get people going, there's 4 number 6s in there, or there's not.
Exactly.
All that's got to be done, yeah.
But it was at a height where Hill couldn't really see into it. Off the back of that comment...
But could he see into the clear bit, though? Which is why I think you can pick holes in this, but carry
on. On that comment, it was then lowered for the next round at Donington.
Yeah.
And Sutton?
I can't remember.
Whoever won there picked it on a fairly low table, and there wasn't any issue about that.
No.
I think the same table as well. Which is the only bit I'm going to add into that. It was of a relatively same height compared to Steve Ryder, who is also there with the ball draw. Unfortunately, when Hill has put his hand into the ball draw this time, he does seem to grab hold of one ball straight away, swill the rest of them round while holding on to this one ball, to then pull that ball out, and it be number 6.
I will say, though, I think he's looking away, personally.
I think he's looking away, but has he clocked where that 6 ball is when he put his hand in? There are going to be so many people... And there have already been so many people on social media going, oh, he's a cheater, he's this, he's that, he's this, he's that.
I don't think he has cheated, personally. I think that we have got history of this. I think, did Rob Austin do this some time ago and they had to do a redraw or something? I can't remember. I'm sure there's been lots of chatter over Rob Austin did this. I can't remember it happening.
I think the fact of Ingram making comments at the start of the season of Huff bagging in 500 quid if he gets it out, that is all very tongue-in-cheek. It just seems a little convenient that he pulled out the lowest ball when he needs to.
But on the flip side, what is the lowest ball people are going to let him get away? Is it if it was a 7 would people be moaning? Is 8 okay? 9? You know, I don't. He says that he's done that technique the entire season, all the way through when he's done the ball draw. I'm not going to go back and look at every ball draw to write it down. I think that
if you have got the time to do that, let us know if he's done that.
I think the easiest solution to this is that, actually it makes so much sense when you say it aloud, is that people involved in the championship and who this actually matters to shouldn't be drawing the ball out. And that's not to say he has cheated, but I'm saying if you look at the wider picture, actually, really, the driver shouldn't be doing it at all. It should be...
it used to be...
Yeah.
Celebrities, famous people, whatever.
Yeah, Jake Humphrey did it once from memory.
Guests going to the event, or make it a competition.
Well, I've seen somebody said on social media, which I really like, for next season, is that you get them the Toka Junior drivers to do it. Builds a bit of camera time for them, builds their brands, let them come and do it. Yeah. I think Jade Edwards spoke about this really well on her social media post, is that she doesn't think he has cheated, and even. Yeah, but equally, you're asking a driver to now be fair after 22 laps of being the most selfish version they can be, because that's part of how you win races and championships. I think it's very dangerous to label somebody a cheat, because you
have to have solid proof.
Absolutely, and you're putting the championship into question marks. I don't like the fact that people are chucking around the word cheat without. The problem is we're never going to know for sure. I don't think he has cheated. I don't think he has looked at the ball. And I think that the problem is we're into the stage of the season now where mass hysteria is on every side. So you've got people saying that this Sutton thing was done on purpose to rule him out of the championship.
Yep.
It wasn't. Of course it's not. Of course it hasn't. You've got people saying Ingram's getting away with murder because Gal wants him to win it. You're saying that Ingram's not getting enough luck because Gal wants him to win it. That Stone was put on the circuit. You're getting so much... And it's natural because it's the point of the season where it really matters now. This is the pinnacle and the crux of the season, but you're getting some absolutely crazy conspiracy theories coming out, and you're getting mass hysteria from fans, and in this social media age as well, it's just so easy to get hysterical about it. If there's any doubt that Hill has done it improperly, there was a long time to deal with it. And it wasn't that, and nothing changed. I don't think Ingram's comments ahead of race 3 are particularly helpful either. If I'm honest with you, whether he's trying to be cheeky or not, fine. But I think personally he crosses a line. Personally, with what he said, I don't like to see that either.
I think he was very diplomatic in the words that he used.
Yeah, but I think that makes it worse in a way. Either come out and say there's not a problem, or come out and say there is a problem. Don't let's not have this tongue in cheek, oi oi oi, wink wink, nudge nudge. Say because that's not helping anybody either. That's just adding fuel to the fire. So I don't think he's been particularly helpful with the situation, albeit I just think that's how he is, and that's how he does interviews, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But I think that the whole thing needs to look at next year. I've seen some people suggest that maybe you put numbers in the balls like the Champions League draw. Problem with that is that you're going to have to undo each ball, otherwise people are going to go, or you're going to have to show all the bits of paper going into the balls, and people are going to say there's 4 number 6s, number 12 isn't there, and even if you do it that way, they go, the ball was heated, they knew which one it was, because you see it.
There's always this with the draws in football and drawing
hot balls and all this
competitions,
hot cold balls,
like
whatever.
That, so
if you leave it to computer, you'll say it's been hacked. If you leave it to, do you know what I mean? Whatever way you do it.
Are you saying do away with the reverse grid?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think actually make the reverse grid bigger is the answer, personally.
Just make it the whole grid.
No, because I think you then.
We've always argued about if you have a bad race 1/race 2, your weekend's ruined. If you reverse the whole grid, there's no issue there at all.
Yeah, maybe. Anyway.
Bit of chaos in race 3.
Yeah, but you then potentially get people. Maybe this time around, Sutton just retires from that race, so he's guaranteed to start on pole. Which I'm not sure is a good thing either. That would be something we discuss somewhere else, because this podcast will otherwise be longer than the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So,
yes.
But I think people need to calm down. I think people need to be careful what they say. And I'm certainly think we should be careful what we say, because they are very, very strong accusations. Ones that I don't believe in. I think people should be careful about what they say, because it has wider connotations on the championship as well, with limited evidence available.
It was ball 6 that was drawn.
It was.
Which meant that Smiley got pole position.
Yep.
And the rain and the heavens opened, didn't they?
Yeah, well, yeah. Not straight away, yeah, but it was very, very wet indeed. So let's go on to race number 3, and as you say, I've covered Ingram's comments. I mean, I think you're more on the fact they're cheeky rather than crossing a line. I think I'm sitting more on the crossing a line side of things, but that's fine.
Can I say?
Yeah.
Smiley gave away a lot of room on his grid slot.
I think when you're at pole and you don't have it very often, you don't want to be getting a penalty for being out of position.
It's true. But yeah, it was a good couple of feet, I think, he gave away.
Certainly wasn't out of position though. And he had Matt Neal with him this weekend, which I think he has had him for most of the season as well. But it's good to see Matt on the grid. Jason was there as well, doing his usual antics. I also they stuck a penalty notice on like a parking fine notice on the Aaron Gow's car as well, which is also quite funny. Anyway,
those two together is just trouble, isn't it?
Yeah, off the line. To be honest with you, it was a bit of a disastrous start for Smiley. It was quite slow. Cameron was able to nip through the inside at Copse, and Ingram decided he was going to go all around the outside to take the lead.
Not without being squeezed first. I thought Smiley was just on the nice limit of squeezing Camish to that pit wall.
Yep, I thought Ingram was incredibly bold in those conditions to stick it around the outside of Copse on cold tyres as well. But he did, and he made the move stick.
It was squirming, wasn't it?
It certainly was. Camish would then lock up and go off the road at Beckett's, and within half a lap it was clear. Cars were visibly twitching on the straights.
Oh yes.
Which it was a very, very wet track. Smiley then went off on his own under the
exactly
conditions.
what Camish did.
Yeah, at Beckett's. Sutton, I mean, my lord, he was up to third by lap 2.
Yep.
What he can do in the rain is insane. The angles he had that car at, which I don't think was fully picked up on the TV coverage, but the angles he was going through Copse at, which was probably the worst part of the circuit.
Yes, it was. Definitely.
Yeah, look, you might think there's a bit too much loving for Sutton on this podcast, but when you see what talent he has, it's unbelievable. He
made the most of everyone's issues on those opening couple of laps.
Yeah.
And he was able to keep his car under enough control to be going forward. But yeah, the way that he was up and passed Hill so early on, I was just like, where did he come from?
Yeah, unbelievable. By lap 3, Turkington aquaplaned off at Copse, and he liked it so much he did it again on lap 4.
And then decided to follow it up by aquaplaning at Beckett's.
Yeah,
straight after that.
Before that, Sumpton had a huge spin at Copse, managed to save going into the wet gravel. Big Gerald Brown trousers went for him. And DeLyon, this is the bit that...
At exactly the same point.
This is the bit that really scared me as a fan, is that he managed to, coming off the corner and on the straight, the car swapped ends on him on the straight, which was, that's too wet. We then saw Turkington aquaplane off at Beckett's, and that was the end of his race. What was really sort of scary on that point of view is that he turned, has it left that corner? And the car went right. Whatever way he turned, the car went opposite.
He went to turn right, and it just swapped ends, went left, and buried itself in the gravel.
Yeah. Red flag was called on lap 9, which was, they did a couple of laps behind safety car before that point. Red flag was called on lap 9. I've been very critical on this podcast before about racing.
At that point, Moffat had already come into the pits with an issue.
That's red this season.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But yeah, I've been quite critical of not racing in wet conditions, but this was 100% the right call. And if anything, it should have been made earlier.
We were messaging each other during this race, and I was like, on the camera, it looked awful.
Yeah.
And the amount of aquaplane that was going on, it began to go the wrong side of safe and dangerous.
Yeah, it wasn't a question about whether you were talented enough to drive in the rain anymore. It was more about whether you were lucky enough to keep it on the circuit. What was interesting during the red flag period, ITV stayed on air. We didn't go to an advert, which was nice. That was good. Some of the interviews are quite interesting as well. I had to say, I did laugh with one of Dick Bennett's. I thought the entitlement of him was quite funny about how all this is terrible because we're rear-wheel drive. Yeah, but you're 3 cars on a 20-car grid, 17 aren't rear-wheel drive. It can't just be about you guys.
Yeah.
We've got damage to the car now. Like, you've had Hill crash, touch people all season.
But you're
You've
also
had Morgan,
a manufacturer team, BMW backed, and
and later in this race, Hill sticks Huff into the gravel, which damages that car potentially. So, a little bit of entitlement, I thought, from that.
Yeah.
Although I think the wide point was sound that it was right to stop. Zelos said the conditions were very scary. Spencer at Bristol Street Motors, who is Tom Ingram's lead mechanic and guy, said it wasn't safe and it shouldn't have been red flagged. I think that gives you an indication as well. Aaron Taylor-Smith's interview was hilarious. Good on him for bringing a bit of fun.
He is such a character, isn't he?
Absolutely. He admitted it was very dangerous, but he was enjoying himself. But it was
he was happy to go again.
On slicks, he said.
Yes,
yeah. Sutton, I think this was quite poignant as well and proves it was the right call. Sutton said it's the right call to be made and felt that they were wasting their time coming in. It should have been called there and then. I will give incredible credit in a moment. Ingram also agreed it was the right call and Cook, while he wanted to go back out, they also agreed it was the right call to stop the race. I'll also give incredible credit to the circuit organisers, the marshals, the clerk of the course, etc., because I thought that was curtains, and I did suggest to the people I was with that we go home, but we said we'll see what happens. You were telling me there's a curfew at 6.
Yeah, as we were made aware on the coverage, the curfew should have been 6 o'clock. I don't know whether they have a limited number of times that they can break that curfew throughout the season.
There's always a bleed over period, and it's touring cars. If it had been the F4s,
I was going to say, I do wonder whether because it was Toka and because it was touring cars, they go, okay, you can have this much to get the race finished. There were reports of us trying to get to possibly half, so
the safety car to make it count,
to 50%, so you can give half points.
Because the way it was, the only thing that could have been done, as my understanding, was that the race would be null and void, which is something that 100% the sport wants to avoid because it's got all kinds of ramifications for the championship. So yeah, I thought they'd come and do what they did in Spa in the F1, come out the safety car, come back in, and then we'll call it quits.
Yeah. And then there were reports of us possibly only going to 15 laps, which would give us that half points. And that most of those would be done under the safety car, and then we might get a few racing ones at the end. But the conditions did actually improve, and I was quite surprised by, in that 20-minute period probably, how quickly the standing water abated. And then they were able to get back out on circuit, start clearing even more water with cars generating spray into the air. Yeah,
that was a good point that both Ingram and Sutton made, is that without cars on track, albeit being the right call to be not on track, but without them on track, it was just going to get worse and water wasn't going to be moved. But no, I was... Yeah, as I say, I've been quite critical on this podcast. I still stand by my calls about Donington and Snetterton, but this was the right call to stop it, and they did even better to get it back up and running. So fair play. We did come back out in the safety car. We had, I think, 3 laps under that, and then I was quite surprised, but on lap 12, the lights went out.
Lights out, we were having a restart. And Ingram went very early on that restart for me. He went going into Luffield, final corner, before they got back out onto the main straight.
It was wet, but I would say it was safe enough to race, personally. The spray was still perhaps a little bit too high, but of course within a lap or two that was always going to abate as more was moved off the circuit. So I think it was, again, the right call there. Lap 18, Sutton started to close right in on... Sorry, no, before that, Sutton got through on Cook with a good pass, and then by lap 18 would close up to the back of Ingram. Although he did make a few errors in this, again, perhaps not surprisingly given the conditions, but a few twitches and a few off moments for Sutton. Zelos was trying to get by Camish. Those were quite a nice little battle, and he did get past Camish on lap 18. Not bad.
Yeah, Camish had originally closed in on Hill at this point. I thought, he's going to have him. But he didn't quite. And then Zelos started to catch up, and I think Zelos had a really good race in race 3.
Absolutely.
Ingram on lap 14 had taken the fastest lap. They were doing a little bit of swapping between him and Sutton, because those two in these conditions, I'd have to say, are just a class above.
100%, absolutely. It wasn't all plain sailing for Zelos, though. He did hit the side of Huff on lap 20 into Cox. I would say it was a little bit clumsy, if I'm being truthful.
Yeah.
But a lot to learn from a rookie going inside of a World Touring Car champion.
That was mentioned a few times this week.
Yeah. Before that, though, we didn't pick up at the time, it was on the replay. Hill managed to get past Huff, ran him wide into the gravel trap, a little bit hip and shoulder. For me, I saw nothing wrong with this. It's sadly, the rules are the rules. Obviously, when Ingram did that to Hill at Donington last season, and the conspiracy theorists came out about that as well. But there was, that was made clear that's not allowed. For me, that's just good old-fashioned touring car racing. Yeah. Nothing that Huff won't be aware of. Nothing that Huff probably wouldn't do himself.
Nope.
And I've got no problem with it. I think that when we get to penalty corner, Hill is slightly unlucky on that one. Albeit that allegedly, and I didn't see it on the replay, and I wasn't at the corner where it allegedly happened, he moved twice under braking, apparently, which I've not seen, so I can't comment.
He did lose a lot of momentum for it, and I wonder whether that might have been a contributing factor, because Zelos, Camish and Morgan got past him at that point.
Yeah, but it's touring car racing.
I know.
Personally, I've got no problem with that, but it is what it is. Again, this race then rather fizzled out. I think, to be fair, the drivers all knew that if there was any incident, it's going to be red flagged again. I think they probably drove a little bit more within themselves. Sutton did catch up to the back of Ingram, and he gave it one last go in the last corner. It was a bit clumsy. It was clumsy, and I think Ingram did incredibly well to hold it.
He was completely in his blind spot. Definitely. He took a completely different line to Ingram through that corner, and he took that line because he just wanted to try something different.
It's a bit clumsy, personally.
Yeah, it was.
I don't blame him for having a go.
No.
And I think the move was on because Ingram was taking the wider line through to keep the tyres wet, etc. But it was ambitious from Sutton, perhaps slightly over-ambitious, maybe.
Yes, it was a last moment, heart in your mouth kind of thing, because you could quite easily have seen them both spinning around and losing out in that situation. One thing of note, Rowbottom lost his wipers on the restart.
So did Dobble.
And Dobble, yeah. So they had to get through the rest of that race with no wipers and just hope, I assume.
The power of prayer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or braille driving.
The end of the results then, Ingram was top from Ash Sutton, Josh Cook in third, so a double podium for Cook this weekend.
Yeah.
Jake Hill fourth, Camish fifth, that will be reversed afterwards, we'll get to that in a moment. Zelos was seventh, that will be reversed, and we'll get to that in a moment. Morgan, Huff, Taylor Smith and Osborne around that top 10. That's 3 top 10s for Osborne this weekend.
So for him over Chilton, mate.
Go away. Dobble in 11th, Chilton in 12th, Delay on 13th, Watson 14th, Rowbottom in 15th. This means that Dobble is the Jack Sears champion, Aaron Taylor Smith is the Independence champion, and PMR are the Independent team champions. So all of that is dealt with a round to go.
Yeah, fairly comfortable for them as well, which we kind of assumed it might well be this season. PMR are the most competitive team of the three teams that are there. So it's only the Cupras competing against them. So it's still a good one to get under there.
Yeah, absolutely. You can only beat what's in front of you, and you've still got to win it.
Yeah.
Right, let's go to penalty corner briefly. Race 1, Dan Rowbottom received an official reprimand and 2 penalty points. He must be getting a fair few on that licence from this season. He must be due a free coffee soon.
I was going to say, he must be due a few free coffees.
Yeah. This is race 1 for causing a collision and incident involving Josh Cook. Personally, on this occasion, I think the penalty points are harsh. I think you take into consideration the conditions. I think it's a little bit harsh. Personally.
It was quite a biff, in my opinion. But
it's a fast corner. That corner's a quick corner. I think you've got to give a little bit of leeway for the conditions. Tom Chilton received a one-place penalty for gaining an unfair advantage in an incident with Cook. Didn't see it on the camera, didn't see it at the time. Don't know what happened. I assume pushed to pass.
Yeah.
None in race 2. Race 3, Jake Hill received an official reprimand and 2 penalty points for more than one change of direction to defend, failing to leave space on the edge of the track manoeuvre, likely to hinder others in an incident involving Rob Huff.
Do you reckon he's been watching Max Verstappen videos?
I think that if you go wheel to wheel and you're on the inside, you have the right to run the other driver wide. Or if a driver's trying to go around the outside of you, I don't think you should just pull over and let him come through.
It's not a case of that. It's still giving racing room on the outside, and if he still wants to stay there, then all luck to him.
Personally, I don't see a lot wrong with that. Hill then also received a one-place penalty during round 27 of the championship for obtaining an unfair advantage in the incident with Dan Camish. Hill on social media just put his hands up and said that's a fair cop.
Yep.
Again, it'll be a push to pass or a bit of contact or whatever it is.
Yeah,
fair play. Dan Zales received a 2-place penalty for his incident with Rob Huff, and again, that's a slam dunker. Can't argue it. Shame for Huff because he had a good race to that point, but yeah, I can't argue those ones. I think
Morgan benefited really well out of that one as well.
He did. This all means that at the top of the championship, it is completely tied on points, which is, I suppose you couldn't manufacture any better.
No, you couldn't. To write a script going into the final weekend with them all level is kind of how you want it. It's going to be a winner takes all weekend. Should we get on to some awards? Yeah,
let's do that then. So, my driver of the day is Tom Ingram. It's not even close. 2 wins and a 4th. Did everything he had to this weekend. Hill's done well this weekend, don't get me wrong, but Ingram is. I think momentum's with him.
You chuffed at my 3 top 6s in the predictions, didn't you?
Well, I wasn't expecting the ball controversy, to be honest.
No, true. But yeah, Ingram.
No, Ingram was mega this weekend, and got pole as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, mega weekend by him. Then for me is I presume you're the same driver on that
Yes,
one. Yeah.
yes.
Then for me is Dan Rowbottom, the worst performing Napa this weekend.
Yeah.
That?
Yeah.
Okay, you can say it's a bit of an error in race 1. Yeah, okay, you can give him a little bit of benefit of doubt in the conditions. But in race 2, didn't make massive progress. Race 3 didn't make massive progress. I know he was sacrificed in race 2, but arguably he shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Yeah.
I was a bit disappointed, really. Didn't do a lot in qualifying. Just had a bit of a meh weekend, really. And I say, without trying to sound too harsh on Osborne, but when you're the worst performing Napa,
yeah. Osborne had a good weekend, and it showed Rowbottom up, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mine's probably going to have to be Moffat. I know there were issues along the way, but this should have been a track where he should go well.
Nah, you say that, but
the conditions should be appealing to him, should I say?
Yeah, I agree with those 2 points. However, I would say I think the Toyota struggled here generally, Cook aside.
I was quite.
I think he came alive in race 3 when it was wet, and to a degree, talent and experience rises to the top.
Quite surprised by Watson this weekend.
It's not
my surprise good, but
he scored 3 points. What was it? 3 points finishes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
My surprise good is I'm gonna give a shout out to Osborne first.
Yeah.
I thought he would do really well this weekend, and let the praise be as loud as disrespect and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe it's the livery. Maybe he just needs to run in a Valvoline livery. Normally, when he's got that on the car, he seems to go well.
The thing is, though, Osborne has shown flashes this season of genuine improvement, and other times you left scratching your head. But this weekend, he was really good. But I'm going to go for, surprise, Dan Zelos. 3 top 10 finishes, and not just top 10 finishes, convincing ones.
Yeah.
Raced with drivers like Cambridge, etc., and didn't look at all out of place. Difficult conditions, got everything spot on, and to consider that he has got those positions on the road in the top 6, having started at the back of the grid on race 1, and his charge in race 1 was terrific.
Yeah.
And I think he's just really mixed well at the front end this weekend. And I know that money is always the barrier of getting people on the grid, but if there's any sponsors out there who are having an hour about whether to go in for something next season, I think there's worse horses to back than Dan Zelos.
Yeah.
Who is a bit shorter, I thought. But there is top that against it.
As you've covered off Zelos, I will actually go for Osborne.
Yeah, okay,
I was really pleasantly surprised by how strong he was this weekend. He was able to race in that mid-pack quite confidently, and in challenging conditions, which we've seen better drivers faltering.
Yep, no, fair point. I've gone for, if surprise bad, I've gone for Moffat, pretty much for the reasons you said, but I don't think I can put him into villain territory because of the mitigation. He can't help the engine being rubbish and being changing. He can't help the transponder not working, therefore not giving him the hybrid in qualifying. And I didn't see him make any mistakes per se this weekend. I just think the car was crap and didn't work for him.
Yeah.
So surprise bad, because I agree with you with the weather. That usually helps him in these conditions.
Yes. And
I was expecting more.
Yeah.
But I'm not. I'm willing to go onto the side of it's the car, not the driver this weekend.
Okay. I'm going to go down the road of Chilton for my surprise bad. I know you had him in your predictions.
Yeah.
He's had a fairly decent season when it's come to qualifying. He didn't perform there. And it was just a bit of a letdown this weekend. I know, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to rub it in.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, fine, good, okay.
Shall we get on to the predictions?
Anyway? Yeah, let's do that. Let's just, okay.
You haven't had that bad a weekend.
No, but nor have you, which is what I needed. So, for pole, you aimed for Hill, you're for Turkerton. Obviously, no points there.
I was close, though. He was second, eventually.
Okay, well done.
Just saying.
Good. I'm sure the Wingfoot Award will be going to Turkerton at the end of the season. I'm sure he'll be happy for it.
Yeah, he probably will.
Race winners, I went for Hill, tick, Ingram, tick, Aaron Smith, no tick. You went for Turkington, no tick, Hill and Ingram, tick, tick. We both went for double for Jack Sears. I believe Dan Zenos won that.
Yes.
The 3 general ones, I'm going to tug on your heartstrings. I went for PMR to qualify at 5th or higher. I assume you're not going to allow me to have that point. I can't call on my favour on it.
Unfortunately not, mate. When the car is classed as illegal for that qualifying session, no, you can't.
It's probably fair enough, albeit Yeah.
Although if I do give you that, I still don't think it would be quite enough at the end of the season.
I think you're right. Do I get to carry my favour into next season?
We'll see. Not into next season, no. New season, new start.
Well, because you should lose a point if I don't get to have a favourite. So
we've still got one round.
We have to let it go. Zelos to outscore Housewood and Sompton combined. That was done.
It was done in race 1.
Yeah, but I wasn't quite sure because the conditions and all that. I thought maybe he would struggle a bit. I mean, he outperformed.
Do you know what? When we did the preview, it was just this little nagging thought in the back of my mind. Didn't I go Zelos for Jack Sears?
Yeah.
I thought, no, I'm going to go for the safe bet. Double in a PMR at Silverstone. Went so well last
year. Yeah. And had his qualification allowed, who knows what could have been.
Yeah.
What could have been. I also went for Chiltern to have 3 top 10s, which I can't call a favouring for. That was, no. You went for an Antonio Smith podium on another day, who knows. You went for Ingram 3 top 6s, yet fair play. You went for Antonio Smith to secure the Indy title. Had double started race 1, I think that it might have gone to Brands Hatch, but I think that effectively, when he doesn't score points, that effectively made it more likely than not. So well done on that one. And I get a point because I went for 56.9 or 1 minute 9, if it was wet, and I was closer to yours of a 57 flat or 1 minute 11. I mean, we were both quite far off.
We were, yes.
But I was closer, so that was fine. Which means it's 4 all, which means I think you've got a 5, if not a 6 point lead going into the final race of the season. Reminder, of course, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 predictions to we do. And there's a 6 point, possibly. So I need to have a 7 point.
We might have a bumper general special prediction for the last weekend.
You say that, but if we do that and I win, you'll then regret that and then try and claim it doesn't happen. So, what I would say is that if anybody has got any suggestions for final predictions of the weekend, or like this weekend we did the fastest lap, for example, if anybody's got any suggestions, whether that be a return to advert bingo or something along those lines, let us know, because we always scratch our heads on the day of the preview record. What should we do in general? So, if you've got any ideas or any suggestions, let us know. We aren't going to Brands Hatch, I don't think. No, we are staying at home because this is on a knife edge.
Yeah, we need to be able to see as much of the coverage of and the racetrack as possible because, as we know, anything can happen at Brands UP, as Camish well knows. So, yeah, anything can happen. It is completely all to play for. It is a winner-takes-all situation. We will be back with a preview for that. We will probably have a little rundown and a look at the 2 competitors.
I think it's 3 still.
Okay, we'll have a look at the 3 competitors that are going into this title.
2.5.
Which half are you having of him?
Well, yeah.
The 3 title competitors going into this final round and bring you up to date with the trials and tribulations they've been throughout the season, how many wins they've had and stuff like that.
You could do some research, are you?
Yeah.
Wow.
If you haven't already...
So, click that up, folks. Click that up, folks. Remember.
If you haven't already, make sure that you get subscribed. We're on pretty much all social media channels. If you haven't found us already, how are you watching this?
I remember to do a TikTok this weekend.
Yes.
That was good.
Yeah, I've made a TikTok, I just need to edit it.
Okay.
So, we've got some more going up on there, and we might have some special podcasts once the season is all done.
Any final thoughts from the weekend, Sam?
I have to say, I was sitting at home yesterday,
Quite smug.
watching, going, I'm glad I'm not there, it's really wet.
It weren't that bad, to be fair. Because the grandstands really help.
Yeah.
And once you're wet, you're wet. But also because it wasn't constant, you could sort of duck and about. So it wasn't as bad as it might have been. My final thought is that I think, I mean, we'll cover it in the preview to a degree, and we'll see if you've changed your mind by then, but Ingram for me from here. Yeah,
it feels as if the momentum is sort of with him now.
It feels like that win in race 3 was very, very important.
Yeah. And I don't know, does Hill seem a little bit rattled?
I haven't done any memory. I haven't got any memory. I haven't done any research, but I don't think he goes particularly well at Brands Hill. I need to have a look.
It could be a lottery. You'll have to tune in to find out, really.
Yeah, well, obviously we'll do all this pointless musing on the Brands Hatch preview. Until then, I will say that Silverstone, they need to look at doing a different layout because it's dull. we had wet weather this weekend. It was still dull.
I didn't.
Race 1 was really boring.
I didn't think it was as dull as what you saw at the track.
Okay, but race 1, normally if you say rain, you think, oh wow, race 1 was still, all the races fizzled out, and I still think they were quite dull given that you had the conditions that we had. I think they run a different version, please. Please, can we run a different version?
Let us know your thoughts on the weekend, and as I said, we will be back with a preview for Brands. But until then, stay safe, stay happy, and look forward to the running. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.